The story starts with a couple. They are in the mood for adventure, set out trekking deep into the mountain forest. But after covering only a short distance, they realized the path ahead had ended. They had just started, so they didn't feel like turning back. Jim looked around and noticed a trail going off to the side. On the trees along that path hung many small copper bells with strange symbols engraved on them. Jim didn't pay much attention and, taking Millie along, started walking down that path. But little did he know that this very path would become the most terrifying nightmare of their lives. After walking a bit further, the weather suddenly changed. From a clear sky, heavy rain began to pour down. While walking, Tim's foot slipped, and he got trapped in a pit covered with a net. Millie rushed to save him, but she too lost her balance, and both fell into a deep cave-like pit. Fortunately, there was water at the bottom, so they weren't badly injured. The first thing they did was try to call for help on their phones, but there was no signal at all. Meanwhile, the storm and rain continued, so they decided to stay there until the weather calmed down. Looking around, they found some dry wood. They lit a fire there and thought of spending the night. Their water had run out, so Tim drank the pit water and gave some to Millie too. Sitting by the fire, they began to talk about old times. It turned out that the hustle and bustle of city life had created distance in their relationship. That's why they had shifted to Millie's parents' old house. Millie had started teaching at a nearby village school, and on her very first day, she met her colleague Jamie, who told her about the nearby mountain trails and suggested this trekking trip. The next morning when they woke up, both were horrified to see that their legs were stuck together by some kind of sticky substance. Tim thought it might be due to moisture and fungus. Enduring the pain, he pulled apart the stickiness, and both managed to climb out by holding onto vine-like creepers. After returning home, their relationship softened a little. Millie offered Tim a massage, but the moment Tim pressed her shoulder, he felt something strange. As if his hand was sinking into Millie's back and fusing with her. His grip grew stronger and stronger, making Millie scream in pain. Suddenly, Tim snapped out of it, but even he couldn't understand what had just happened. After a while, Millie left for the market, and Tim thought of taking a bath with hot water. But then something mysterious happened, as if his consciousness was slowly fading away, and his steps started wandering strangely around the bathroom on their own. When he regained his senses, Tim himself couldn't understand what was happening to him. To find answers, he went straight to the hospital. After the checkup, the doctor told him that this was not some physical illness, but rather the effect of mental stress. He explained that such symptoms could appear due to excessive anxiety and nervousness. Tim was given some muscle-relaxing medicines that help reduce tension in the nerves. Before he left, the doctor told him something that got stuck in Tim's mind. After returning home, he started searching the internet for information about missing people. Shockingly, among the missing persons was a couple the police had been looking for many days, but there was still no clue about them. Not long after Jamie came to meet, Tim and Millie welcomed him and narrated the whole incident of falling into the pit the previous night. Out of curiosity, Tim asked if the bells hanging on the trees in the forest had any special meaning. Smiling, Jamie replied that there used to be a small church there once, but years ago it collapsed and its people disappeared somewhere. While the conversation was ending, Tim noticed that Jamie's eyes were lingering on Millie a bit too much. While leaving, Jamie even hugged Millie, which made jealousy rise within Tim. As soon as Jamie stepped out the door, Tim suddenly grabbed Millie and kissed her. But as soon as their lips parted, Tim felt a sharp pain, as if someone had bitten him. Millie thought that Tim himself had bitten her. Annoyed, she went straight to her room while Tim stood there silently. In the middle of the night, Millie felt as if someone was pulling her hair. She tried several times to wake Tim, but he didn't budge. As soon as she turned on the light, she was shocked. Tim's mouth was stuffed with her hair. Tim woke up screaming and began pulling the hair out. With great difficulty, he finally managed to get it out. The next morning, Tim was about to leave for the city for his show. Millie came to see him off at the bus stand. But the incident from the night before had once again brought tension into their relationship. Millie said that maybe it would be better if they stayed apart for a few days. She left in her car, but shortly afterward, Tim suddenly began feeling restless and experienced a strange heat in his body. He immediately took the medicine prescribed by his doctor, but it had no effect. Meanwhile, Millie was teaching children at school. When the class ended, she noticed a strange drawing in a student's notebook. During the break, while she was video calling her friend, she suddenly saw Tim outside the window. She ran out immediately and brought him inside. But Tim's condition was completely different. His eyes were restless, and on his face was a strange desire for satisfaction. As soon as he went into the washroom, he pulled Millie toward him. Intimacy grew between them, but when it was over, Tim realized he wasn't able to detach himself from her. In the end, they forcibly pulled themselves apart, but the noise was so loud that people outside were startled. Such an incident at school could put Millie's job at risk. Panicked, she went straight to Jamie's house and pleaded with her not to tell anyone about it. Tono sat down and started talking. Millie shared with Jamie the problems she was facing in her relationship with Tim. Jamie also shared his story. The same thing had happened with him too. Once he and his girlfriend were very much in love with each other. But over time, fights kept increasing, and they decided to live separately. Their conversation hadn't even finished when Millie saw Raheem standing outside the window. She immediately got up, said goodbye to Jamie, and went out. At night, Tim again started looking for information about the missing couple. He discovered that their last photo was taken near the same cave where he and Millie had fallen. He zoomed into the picture and noticed the same bells hanging there. Just then, a loud noise came from behind, startling him and making him fall. Through the glass door, he saw a stranger's face, and the door kept shaking violently. Tim gathered courage and opened the door, but as soon as he turned the handle, a strange pulling force stuck him and Millie tightly together. Tim kept shouting Millie's name loudly, but she wasn't responding at all. Finally, he shook her hard and brought her back to consciousness. Millie thought Tim had hit her. After he explained himself, both of them sat at the dining table, wondering what on earth was happening. Millie believed that maybe she had suffered some kind of seizure, but Tim denied it. He said that from childhood until today, Millie had never had a seizure, and all of this only started after returning from the cave. He also mentioned the missing couple and said their disappearance had also happened near the same cave. To Millie, it all sounded like nonsense, and she went off to bed. But before leaving, she decided that Tim would sleep in a separate room tonight. At midnight, Tim felt that his body was moving on its own, as if some force was pulling him. He tried to stop it, but just then, Millie's bedroom door slowly opened, and she came toward him, moving strangely. Their palms pressed tightly against each other and slowly began to merge into one. Jim suddenly remembered the medicine given by the doctor. With Billy's help, he picked up the packet of medicine, but due to trembling hands, a few pills fell to the ground. Both of them quickly picked them up and swallowed them. The medicine had some effect, so they tried with all their strength to separate their stuck palms. But because of the pain and the drug's intoxication, their bodies had already grown weak. They didn't even realize when night passed, and Tim slipped into unconsciousness. The next morning, when he opened his eyes, he found himself tied to a chair with a running chainsaw lying nearby. Before he could understand anything, Millie forcefully poured a few gulps into his mouth and then picked up the chainsaw, trying to cut the skin of their joined hands. Amidst the screams of both, their hands finally got separated. After a light bandage, Millie decided she would immediately go to the hospital. But then she remembered that the keys to her car were left at Jamie's house, so she rushed there quickly. Meanwhile, Tim felt that going to the hospital would be of no use, and he decided to go back into the cave. On the cave wall, he saw a painting, two people's backs stuck together. At the same time, Millie reached Jamie's house. When no one answered the door, she went straight inside. While searching for the keys, she heard a sound coming from the TV. As she got closer, she saw the same painting on the screen. It was actually a ritual of a secret cult. Jamie and his girlfriend had also performed this union ritual inside an old church after their marriage, where people believed that this ceremony bound two people together forever. Just then, Jamie appeared from behind. Millie asked him what the meaning was of what was being shown on the TV. Jamie smiled and said, "This is a blessing through which two people become completely one. Without any walls or distance, they can even share each other's fears and memories." As soon as he said this, Jamie gave a deep cut on Millie's hand, but Millie immediately struck back with a punch and ran away. Meanwhile, inside the cave, Tim stumbled over something and fell. A sticky substance was spread on the ground, making it difficult to get up. Just then, a terrifying creature appeared before him. It had 2 heads, 4 arms, and legs. Tim screamed for help, but the strange thing was that the creature too was shouting, "Help!" Tim recognized the head with red hair. It was the same missing couple. One of them had a knife stuck in their neck. Out of fear, Tim pulled the knife out and used it as a weapon. Then he cut off the creature's fingers. Seizing the moment, he grabbed a rope and climbed out of the cave. On the way, he bumped into Millie. Both decided that they should keep their distance from each other. But in the very next moment, they started getting drawn closer on their own. In the end, they stopped resisting. Tim went down on his knees, took out a ring from his pocket, and proposed to Millie. He opened his heart and spoke of all the feelings he had carried for years. Both realized that without each other, they were incomplete. But just then, Tim picked up the knife and placed it on his throat. His intention was to end this curse by giving up his own life. At that very moment, the image of that creature from the cave flashed in his mind. Perhaps they too had once tried the same but failed. And because of that, they had turned into half-human, half-demon beings. At this time, Millie was lying unconscious on the ground because she had lost a lot of blood. In a panic, without thinking twice, Tim rushed to her and lifted her in his arms. Nobody knew how much time had passed, but slowly Millie's eyes began to open. She saw that Tim had pressed his hand on her wound to stop the bleeding. The shocking thing was that now both of their hands had fused together as one. In that very moment, they both realized that if it was impossible to live without each other, then why not become one forever? A few days later, Millie's parents came to meet them. When the door opened, Tim and Millie were standing there. But now together, they had transformed into a new kind of human being. With this, the story ends here. Let me know your thoughts and also subscribe to this channel for more horror stories like this.